pumped to get things started this week. Reminder, we got games Thursday, Friday. We'll have shows and stuff for both of those for Showdown and whatnot. And we've also got a big slate Sunday, and they did something that I like. That's gonna help, I think, Sheets this year even too, because they've made it so there's a minimum of at least 3 games in the afternoon. I think we had 4 weeks last year where there was only 2 games in the afternoon, but it allows for more late swapping and potentially for some more edge. If you guys have watched Sheets's process videos, I think that there's a lot there that you can really take something from. I know I will be doing that, and I will also be going live every Sunday at 3 Eastern to go through 15-20 minutes probably of what I'm doing in terms of shifting things around, both by hand building and then also by using the Saber Sim as an advantage. So Sheets, first week of the season, any overall thoughts before we jump into this without
Yeah, before we get into anything, first of all, there's a game Friday, you said?
Yeah, there's a Friday game in Brazil.
There's a Friday game in Brazil.
Yeah, it's Philadelphia and Green Bay.
There's like no slate on the board.
I don't know what they're doing with that one personally. I haven't taken a look yet, so I was waiting a little bit, but I'll take a look.
There's literally nothing on DraftKings indicating that game exists at all.
That's bizarre. Well, I'm sure they'll put something up. I'd be very surprised, but we'll see, I guess. Anyway, yeah.
That's very strange.
It is very strange that they don't have something up for it. I thought they would have like a special, like even a bigger tournament possibly, but I guess not. So yeah, I'll take that.
What do you think? What are you looking for this year in the NFL? Do you see any like big changes in the way people play? Do you see like any? I mean, what's like or either football or DFS or both?
The conventional wisdom is that there should be a little bit more scoring. They estimated, but somewhere between 1 and 1.5 points with the new kickoff rules, where you basically just can't kick it out of bounds every time. So that's one thing to keep an eye on. I think there's a lot of question marks and a lot of, football with everything else. It's the groupthink mentality is like the big thing, and there's a lot of things out there that I don't know that I'm buying as much as other people are going to be buying. One of them is like, but those are more on season bets, not necessarily for DFS that I have a specific angle. I do think that again, we've talked about it. You mentioned that some other smart guys at Saber Sim are doing this. I think the triple stacking with your quarterback is something I want to play around with more this year. I'm generally a 2-stack, depending on the situation, but unless it's like Houston, I always want like a 2-man stack with my quarterback and a guy who can run a little. But I think if you're going to be playing pass-heavy quarterbacks, you should be playing a lot more 3-man stacks, especially in large field buy-ins.
One of the things that last year was basically the first year that like the Sims just started playing the NFL, and two things happened. One is from what I was able to gather, a lot of the Sims and all the lineups that were created are kind of I don't like disproving, but making it less. Saying that it's less important to have run backs than people thought in the big GPPs. So the other thing that happened last year was that the highest owned kind of running back or player, whatever he was projected for, you could like almost double it. Right. Which was again interesting. And again, the thing is that with more people using Sims and more people being sharper with ownership projections, I think that they're going to get even better over year over year. So I don't know where it's going to end up, but I'm actually kind of looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to Showdown, looking forward to the classic slates, and I'm also looking forward to figuring out some of these newer players. I wanted to ask you because I'm getting some of these like rookies and some of these guys kind of showing up, and they're showing up as like good median projections, and I want to get your opinion on whether they're like upside type guys or more just kind of guys that are just going to get their points or something like that. Because I really, as you guys know, I don't really follow the colleges, nor do I really follow the draft. So these are just guys that are just showing up for me, and I want to get a little color from that. And you know what you're going to hear? You're going to hear that the listen, it's very unpredictable week 1 or whatever. I mean, sure, whatever. I mean, the NFL is unpredictable week 1, tied ever so closely by the NFL every other week. Okay, so
right.
I'm not worried too much about that.
I mean, you can make a real argument that week 1 is actually the most predictable because we at least have some idea of who's playing. We don't have to wait an hour and a half before the games for the most part to see who's even playing. Go ahead.
No, and the fact is that especially with best balls, the fantasy analysts have been just freaking talking about all these players for like 8 months. You know,
Right.
so I have a feeling that things are going to be pretty tight. You know, and you're not going to see who the hell is that guy starting that has 200 yards. You know, like some
Right.
Devon A-Chain guy showing up out of nowhere or something like that. Although from what I hear, people were onto A-Chain before I knew who he was last year too. So I'm just gonna go with the projections. There's and then go with the Sims and see what I can come up with. And I'm just kind of ready to get after it.
Yeah, I love it. I wanted to mention one quick thing about why that happened last year, and it's partly due to what you're saying about people getting better with the Sims. But the projected highest owned running back, especially, was almost always McCaffrey last year. And McCaffrey plays in San Francisco, as everybody knows, which are mostly going to be afternoon games. So basically, when you're swapping, if anything you feel like is a decent lineup or a good start, people were swapping onto McCaffrey basically all the time then, because you have basically a sure 25 to 35 points, So I wonder if it's going to hold true this year, especially as, well, he's not on the slate, but there is McCaffrey starting the year banged up. So we'll see how it happens. It's going to be interesting to play it out. And I'm interested in a lot of these, maybe giving a little more edge to the afternoon games than I have in years past. All right, so starting off, what do you have first? Because they're all the same time for me. So Cincinnati, New Orleans.
Carolina, New Orleans.
Carolina, New Orleans.
We're already off to a good start.
A flying start. And it's funny because I know who's playing. I've known who's playing forever. It's just hard to see. I'm trying to read your screen and just go with it. But I guess I missed on that one. All right.
Yeah. So Carolina, New Orleans. It's weird to see guys like this as high owned and as high projected as this, but. When we first looked at Chuba Hubbard, he was like a guy that would back up. I guess it was McCaffrey, right? Back when. And now he's showing up as kind of like the top. Again, I ran some stuff. I ran some ownership. I ran some whatever. He's showing up as kind of like the best, one of the top 2 or 3 best running back plays on the slate, which is it's a little. I wasn't ready for that. Alvin Kamara on the other side, running back wise. I'm getting, listen, he's definitely on the. I should say definitely on the downswing of his career or whatever. But I definitely presume there are other guys with more upside than he does for skill set wise. But he's still showing up as like kind of okay. I currently get about 10% of him. But as far as like a game to stack and whatever it is, I mean, I'm not really getting much of this. I'm not really getting much of this at all. I mean, really. So I don't know. I definitely like both the running backs, and that's pretty much I think what I have.
Yeah, so I agree that it's not a game I want to stack, and it's certainly not a game I want to watch. This is probably the worst game of the week or one of them, based on what everybody thinks of these teams at least. I do think that the value for Hubbard definitely makes some sense. He should get plenty of work there. He also, has a little bit of pass catching upside, as does Kamara. And Kamara at chalk makes me a little bit nervous, and I have my sneaky suspicion is Carolina's going to be bad, but better than they were last year. And I thought that New Orleans was getting a little overrated, and then finally the last week of the season, everybody who's doing every podcast started to sort of come along on that train. But yeah, both running backs are going to be in play. Heavy chalk. I think that you could argue for these guys being cash game options. Just want to remind everybody, Taysom Hill still exists. And that does take away from Kamara, whether we like to, people might think it's too much. We say it, whatever. It takes away a lot when you're going to run, Taysom Hill all the time within 5 yards. So my overall theory in general is I'd like to get less of Kamara than the field on when he's chalky. So I'm probably going to take that same angle here. And I'm not so sure I want to go with the Hubbard. I am betting that Bryce Young has a better year. I have a little bit of interest in Deontay Johnson, just a great PPR. You don't play him on FanDuel, you play him on DraftKings. Excellent PPR receiver, should help Bryce out a little bit. And Thielen is cheap enough, and Olave has upside. But again, priority-wise, it probably is the running backs. But for me, it's more the Hubbard side than the Kamara. All right, moving on to Pittsburgh and Atlanta, which is actually a pretty interesting game.
Yeah, so got a couple of pieces from Atlanta that are showing up as kind of good plays, but I'm not really getting to stack them. So I'm getting like Bijan Robinson and Drake London, both. I'm getting about 20% of them right now. But as far as stacking it, I'm not really getting that. So they're both are kind of showing up as one-offs for me. And as far as Pittsburgh, I mean, I have to scroll really far down to get to anything. Let me see. Let me just make sure. Yeah, I'm also getting – this is so weird. Like I'm getting Kyle Pitts too as like a good play. but I'm not getting anything with putting all those guys together. So we'll just see how that plays out. But I like all three of those main skill players for Atlanta, and that's pretty much what I got here.
Yeah, I'm very interested to see how this season shakes out for Pittsburgh. It looks like Russell Wilson, he's going to be starting. And you have Atlanta, who's the team with all the toys and actually got themselves a quarterback, so should play a more functional version of football. Tyler Algier is still there, and for whatever it's worth. And I'm not talking about playing him. I'm just saying that it could cut into Bijan Robinson. And at this price, it would be tempting to – but I believe Bijan Robinson is going to be the second or third best running back on the season fantasy-wise. So I'm probably going to, in general, play him even in a bad matchup on paper against Pittsburgh. Well, mediumly bad matchup on paper against Pittsburgh. And then I have interest in Drake London and George Pickens. I think George Pickens is a candidate to have an absolutely massive year and end up as potentially a top 10 receiver. I think that they have a better chance with Justin Fields myself than I do Russell Wilson. But it is Russell Wilson. It's what we got. I like both London and Pickens, and I like Pitts and I like Freiermuth, but I prefer Pitts. So again, football is weird. You're going to have a lot of different players you play, but nobody who quite makes like an ultra priority list for me up from this game. I do think London and Pickens, though, by the end of the week, I think I'm going to talk myself into as being very strong plays. All right. And I love the dome games. Arizona and Buffalo. This should be a fun game. I like
you think it would be, but for whatever reason, I'm not really getting it too much in at least my projection-based approach right now. If like I ran my lineups right now, I'd be getting like 10% James Cook as far as the running backs go, and very little if anything, with respect to the receiving on both sides of this, which is really strange because, like you said, I mean, you think it should be a fun game. We're going to see what happens with Trey McBride this year, whether he can continue what he was doing last year, which was really, really good. I'm getting with the field on him 10, 12%, something like that. But I'm a little disappointed that I'm not getting more of this game action.
They priced him up, man. I'll tell you that. They made it hard for you. That's why. I mean, you look at Marvin Harrison Jr. and look, I love this guy. I think he's going to be the next superstar of the NFL. But he comes straight in as a rookie at 7,200. That's a pretty big price tag. Yeah. I mean, Josh Allen. This should be a good chance to move the ball against an Arizona defense that's questionable. But Arizona, I think, is going to be better than they were last year. So again, maybe for fantasy, I'm having a little bit of a hard time here. But I do think Cook is the logical running back play. I think James Conner is the most overlooked guy in fantasy. I mean, he's consistently productive. Maybe he doesn't have the ceiling you want for some of the guys in his price range, but I just think I wanted to mention that because I'm definitely considering him. And then you have Buffalo, where their lead receiver might be their rookie Keon Coleman, although it might be Shakir. I just don't know what to do with it. So the safest thing to me would be if I'm playing anything here outside of nothing is a priority. Cook is the most logical, but I think Dalton Kincaid is going to have a monster season, and I actually think I would play him ahead of McBride this week. And again, there's probably better options, and there definitely have cheaper options. But I think Kincaid is going to have. I think he'll be a top 3 tight end at the worst by the end of the season, maybe even higher, because that ball's got to go somewhere. Josh Allen's going to fling it, and they don't have there's no Diggs, there's no Gabe Davis. All these guys who they've had are gone. So it's going to be Shakir, Coleman, or Kincaid. My bet's on Kincaid. That's pretty much all I got.
Okay, so here's the first, guy I want to ask you about. So you have Tennessee against Chicago. I'm getting just nothing on the Tennessee side of this at all. But I'm getting some, maybe 10% Chicago stacks. And I'm getting like 30% of this Rome Odunze at 4K. So you got to give me a little bit of color on who he is. And I'm not really getting too much else. But actually, with DJ Moore kind of completes that stack. So the DJ Moore with the Odunze, I guess with Caleb Williams, quarterback. So that I'm getting a decent amount of that. But who is the Odunze guy? What do you think about him, and what do you think about the
lightning quick, huge weapon down the field. You're probably going to be a guy you want to play more on FanDuel than on DraftKings. Just in general, just because he's probably going to catch less passes for more, and make it up with air yards. That he's the home run hitter, but he's got the perfect home run hitter and quarterback. And it's interesting because they have Keenan Allen, and we'll see if he's available this week. As of right now, I'm guessing that I don't know what I'm guessing, to be honest with you. He's questionable. So Keenan Allen being questionable means Odunze might get a lot more work than he otherwise would have. And I think then he becomes an extremely chalky play if we eliminate Keenan Allen. But I think DJ Moore is also tremendous. And we know, we saw what Fields could do with Moore. And look, Caleb Williams, I still have a weird feeling the Bears are going to be worse than people think this year. But there's no question that Caleb Williams is going to be a fantastic DFS option in my mind. He's gonna have to turn the ball over some. He's also going to air it out. And Odunze is the kind of guy who could really benefit from that, as could DJ Moore and as could Keenan Allen. If all three of those guys are healthy, I think Odunze is a good large field play, but I don't think he makes as much sense. You're not playing him probably in single entry. But he is going to be the high upside, but you're going to want some huge plays out of him, because I don't think he's going to be getting 10, 15 targets. He may. I just don't think that's going to be the way that he's utilized if Allen and Moore are healthy, because they just won't have room for him. So I thought about this one for a little bit. On the other side, Calvin Ridley, first time with Tennessee. Will Levis, everybody's very high on Levis, and I think he's got talent. We'll see. DeAndre Hopkins, without knowing whether or not he's playing, which I assume he will right now, I don't know why we have to play Calvin Ridley more than we have to play DeAndre Hopkins. And this is a game where I feel like I'm off the individual plays, but I might end up wanting to stack it. I know that sounds weird, just because I think Caleb Williams, there's so much upside. He could throw for 4 touchdowns and have 3 interceptions the first week, and you just sort of want both sides of that. You know what I'm saying? So that's what I'm trying to figure out here. But no individual plays that stand out to me as being awesome plays, unless Keenan Allen is out or too banged up to even play as many snaps. Then I would be turned on to Odunze. But nothing that quite makes the priority list. Again, though, a game I'm looking at stacking, though, even though nothing's a priority for me. All right, we move on to what do we move on to?
I have New England, Cincinnati.
Okay.
So obviously, it's supposed to be a down year, to say the least, for New England. They already had down year, but they're a new coach, new approach, new whatever. I mean, I don't know. I'm sure. One thing about it is that I know they're going to try. They're going to try to do whatever they can do. It's a tough matchup going into Cincinnati for sure. I haven't a single New England guy on my board. Although, wait a minute, I'm not even getting. Is Peterson still on New England? No. Who I'm getting?
Stevenson?
No, for New England, I'm getting 12% of
Jalen Polk.
That's what I'm.
You'll see as you go through, there's a lack of value, so those guys are going to show up.
Yeah, I guess. And then on the Bengals, I'm really not getting it too much. Maybe it's because of the game script or something like that. But actually, that's not true. I'm getting a full 15% of T. Higgins. That's something. I guess I'm not getting as much Jamar Chase. I guess that's what I was going to say. But yeah, I mean, Bengals should control the game. Bengals should win, and I can't imagine this being a particularly high-scoring game. I can't imagine this winning anybody anything. But T. Higgins, good play, and maybe that New England guy I mentioned could do enough to justify his value.
Yeah, I'm a little bit interested in the poke, but I also think you could say Iasavis on the other side, he's 3K flat. He should be their third receiver and take over the Tyler Boyd role. And at 3K, that's kind of interesting to me.
Who is this?
Iasavis, the Cincinnati. He's their third receiver.
Okay.
Chase and look, you can always everybody's questioning Chase, and this might actually be the time where okay, maybe we just say F it. Look, they have New England week 1. New England's actually got a good defense, as bad of a team as they are. But maybe they just say F it with all this contract talk from Jamar Chase, and maybe Burrow, who goes back to college with Chase, and they love each other. Maybe he just says, hey, this is the FU for Chase week. We go out there and we get him 200 yards. So maybe that's an interesting play that we can consider, assuming that he does in fact play and they say he's good to go. So I think Jamar Chase makes for a phenomenal tournament play at no ownership, because the projections will hate him. So that's what I've got, and I also am a little bit interested in the Isavis. But the real play, if you're gonna just play the logical side of this, I think you just play Zach Moss, and he belongs in the same category, I feel like, as Hubbard. But he's got the right game script. He's new there. The only issue is I think Chase Brown is pretty talented, and that's the other running back they have. So it could cut into him enough to where he's probably, he may not be as good enough play to be 20% owned like he's being projected.
Where did Mixon go? Is he retired?
No, Mixon is in Houston now.
Okay.
Houston now got all these guys.
Speaking of which,
there we go.
Is that next? Yeah, it's Houston. Yeah, Houston.
This is probably the game we're going to talk a lot about.
Yeah, so Houston, Indianapolis. This is where I'm getting the highest ownership on the offensive side, specifically on the Colts. I'm getting like 24% Colts stacks, and then Anthony Richardson like 27% of my lineups with him. So that's a big, pretty big number. 28% Pittman makes sense, given what I just said. Kylan Granson, 2,900 tight end, filling out that stack rather nicely. Jonathan Taylor, running back. So there's a lot of offense from Indianapolis. Interestingly, hang on.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Sorry about that.
Interestingly, though, I don't know why I'm not getting much of Houston. Getting like 9% like Nico Collins or something, but that's all I'm getting right now is that. So tell me what you think about this.
Yeah, so it's tricky with Houston because the pecking order is hard to figure out as far as receivers go. I mean, like you have Collins and Diggs are going to be projected near the same because there's some familiarity with Collins. Diggs has become a very good possession receiver, but not really the same, home run hitter that maybe he once was. He wasn't even. He's always been a possession receiver. And Tank Dell is your home run guy for them, but they priced him all up, so it makes it a little bit hard to get him in. I'm okay with just saying sort of F the projections and just take your shots. The weird part is like this is the kind of game that I think comes up for an interesting type of stack. Like I am never going to stack Anthony Richardson with more than two people, and I'm talking about the triple stacks. That's for pass-heavy quarterbacks. Anthony Richardson is going to do a lot of his work on the ground. And if you're going to play him, I think you isolate you could play him in a single stack and run back 3 Houston receivers or 2 Houston receivers and Dalton Schultz at tight end. All of that is very, very logical to me. This is the game that I have the most interest in on the slate. I'm going to mix and match my favorites, though. I mean, Pittman and Granson are the obvious targets you play with Richardson. I also don't mind the idea of getting to some Jonathan Taylor. I think he's going to have a bounce back here. He's really expensive. It's going to be hard to get all this in. But I'm going to try. And I don't think Mixon on the other side is a bad play either. I think if I had to pick the order of how I like the Houston receivers, Tank Dell is basically like best friends with what's his name, with Stroud. I'll take a shot on Tank Dell at 5,500 because I can get all of that paid off on 2 plays where it's going to be, and Collins could as well. I don't think Diggs is more likely to catch 10 balls and that's the way he gets there. But there is just a lot of traffic there and it's hard to figure out how to play. It's also going to keep the ownership lower on Stroud, and that's like, coming into the year, you'd think that this would be against Indianapolis. In Indianapolis, these games are always shootouts. So I guess my overall take is be overweight everything in this game. At least that's my stance right now. I like it by far the best on the slate, and I will be heavily invested, especially in the Richardson side, with combinations of Pittman, maybe some Alec Pierce for value, and then Granson at tight end. I think that makes a lot of sense, and just mix and match the Houston guys you run it back with. But I'm definitely going to be heavily invested in a lot of Houston games this year and a lot of Indianapolis games this year.
I think this next game is one that can kind of go bananas too. Miami against Jacksonville. Miami just really just like hammered on the accelerator all last season, and Jacksonville plays fast as well. So I think this game, in a way, sort of depends, I guess, on Jack. Well, is this game in Miami or is this neutral? This is at Miami, right?
I believe it's in Miami, unless I missed something.
Yeah. So in any case, weather will be good, and I presume, and I think this game can deliver on Jacksonville side. Ingram, Kirk, even Etienne, and the quarterback. Miami is expensive, like you said with the other teams. But freaking Tyreek Hill could put up freaking 200 yards. So I don't know what to say. I mean, I actually don't think he's that expensive. He's under 9K. I mean, he was higher than that last year.
Yeah. So
I think it's very, very reasonable. And I think this game can kind of go off. I don't know what I'm doing with this A-chain stuff though. I don't think I'm gonna mess with these running backs here. I'm just gonna probably play the receivers.
So yeah, I like this. I mean, I think this game makes a lot of sense as well. I like Lawrence a little. I guess I don't even know if I like him better than I like Tua. I think they're close. I just like the rushing upside, I guess. But I think they're both solidly in play, and I'm interested in the fact that no one's playing Tua. I don't really entirely understand that. I thought I was going to see some ownership there. I am going to mix and match. In large field, I'm going to probably end up overweight on Mostert and A-Chain every single game. And I don't even care if they end up together. They were on the winning lineups the millionaire winner 3 times together last year. Mostert led the league in rushing touchdowns, and A-Chain led the league in every explosive play category basically that there is. And Tyreek Hill is still on that team too. So they run a lot of different stuff. The question is A-Chain's 10 touches or 8 touches or whatever it is, are they worth as much as the 20 of the other running backs? Last year they certainly were, but I will throw in there that Mostert was also, like I said, he led the league in touchdowns, as a running back. So I'm in on this one as well. I like the Hill pairing. I'm interested to see who sort of emerges, whether it's going to be Kirk. This Brian Thomas Jr. has got a lot of talent and a lot of people talking about him. So I can see Brian Thomas Jr. being a very strong play at low ownership and what should have, not chalky, but a chalkier version of the game. You're going to see a lot of ownership on Evan Ingram. I have no issue with it. I just wanted to point out that it seems a little bit high. But yeah, this is game stack number 2 for me. Another one that I expect to be overweight most of the plays, none more so than Tyreek. And if we can find some cheap stuff, I would love to try a Tyreek and chase on my little narrative thing or something like that. If I can get 2 of these spend ups at receiver, you have some pay downs at running back, but you're going to need some value at both tight end and at receiver. And we just don't have that much value at receiver in this slate yet. All right. So moving on, what do you have? Which one is next?
Last game of the 1 o'clock set. Well, not last game; they're all the same. But Minnesota, the Giants. Yeah, I mean, you have Minnesota. Sam Darnold returns to the Meadowlands, where I don't think he's ever had a good game. But now he brings back Justin Jefferson with him. So
that's right.
And the other guys, I mean, Minnesota are pretty good receivers, and Aaron Jones is coming from Minnesota. So I'm getting like 10% of Aaron Jones, whatever. I'm really not getting too much of Jefferson. I mean, Giants, they bring some heat. I think it's I don't know. I mean, if he's smart, he'll just keep looking for Jefferson the whole time. But otherwise, the Giants can put some pressure on him. Anyway, the guy I wanted to ask you about. So there are 2 receivers from the Giants. One we remember from last year, and that was Wan'Dale Robinson. He never really had any depth of target, I don't think. I mean, he just kind of made some catches from time to time. But then you have the new guy, the Malik Neighbors, who's getting I'm getting like 24% of him. And talk about like rookies that are just getting priced. You know what I mean? Like 5,900. That's a number, right? With kind of an offense which isn't great. So I don't know. But I'm getting 24% of that. So you tell me what you know about him. You like Wan'Dale Robinson? Because I am getting some Giant stacks here. Imagine like 15% of them. And I wonder if this is another situation where if you play Giant stacks, you don't want to play 3 receivers either. Because Daniel Jones, I don't know why he continues to try to run. He just gets killed every time.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, I mean, he's just not a pocket pass. He just isn't. But listen, I like Daniel Jones here. I like Wan'Dale Robinson. So little. Seems like he has so little upside though. And tell me about this Neighbors guy. So
Neighbors is he was one of the best receivers in college football last year. I think there's a lot of people who will argue that he and Harrison are going to be like in the top 5 like right away. The projections are certainly treating it like that for Neighbors. He was the number 6 overall pick. And it was weird to do that when the Giants definitely needed a quarterback and decided not to go for that quarterback, which ended up oddly enough on Minnesota, but he's not playing in this game. So I actually think because the pricing, it's hard to just ignore both quarterbacks. I think they both make sense just because they're 5,400 and we know Jones has rushing upside for a touchdown. Darnold less so rushing upside, but does have, as you mentioned, Jefferson, and he's super. What's his name? Darnold is super cheap. Jefferson is not super cheap, but it's going to be a fight between he and Tyreek Hill and Jamar Chase a lot of the season. I like the Neighbors play. I'm a little cautious about doing it at this ownership. We haven't seen a Giants receiver have a big game since basically Daniel Jones has been there. Why am I going to play a 20% guy in his first game? I love the talent. I think he's going to be a star. I don't think it's necessarily going to be with Daniel Jones in the future, but I just don't feel right about that. I think that you could make an argument for the running backs, but I actually think Singletary is kind of interesting because So the reason the Giants receivers are going to look better and everything too is you don't just have, you can't hand the ball off to Saquon Barkley 35 times anymore.
Right.
And you're probably not going to do that with Devin Singletary, but Singletary can catch passes out of the backfield and is just an interesting pivot off of some really heavy chalk on Zach Moss, on Hubbard. There's some other value that's going to just be looked at ahead of him. So I just wanted to keep him on my list for now. But I probably will be underweight the receivers from the Giants, because if we've learned one thing in DFS over the last years, it's basically been the right thing to do every week when Daniel Jones is playing or not. And I don't see why I'm going to all of a sudden assume that Daniel Jones is going to turn into the player that I guess they wanted him to be 4 years ago. So I'm underweight probably on this game in general. And except for I do think the quarterbacks are so cheap that it's hard not to find. But again, I don't want to double pair these guys either, because I just don't see them winning in shootouts. It's hard for me to picture. I think I would probably pair just Jefferson and excuse me, with Darnold is probably my favorite pairing from this game. All right. Here's an interesting one. Vegas and LA, or yeah, whatever. LA, whatever. Vegas and LA.
Okay. I'm not really seeing too much. Zamir White was good near the end of the year when they gave him the reins, when Josh Jacobs, I guess, was out. He was good enough, I guess. But I'm not really getting too much of anything here. We have to ask the Chargers whisperer, Rhodey, about this. But
the problem is he always whispers the same thing. He always whispers, play them, play them, play them.
Right, but I mean, the best thing I can come up with is Chargers defense in this game at 2,900. So I really don't have too much in this one.
Yeah, I like the Chargers defense too. I think that there's a lot of buzz around the Chargers this year with the Harbaugh thing and everything. They did something interesting. They basically went out and got, Baltimore led the league in rushing last year, and it wasn't just because, it was mostly because of Lamar, but they did have Dobbins and Edwards, so now they've got that combination as their backfield. These guys are super cheap. It's hard because the work is going to be split, but that's really going to be the case with most teams. So I'm just throwing them out there as pivots off of some of the heavy chalk elsewhere. I don't know why they should be 1% owned. So
they got both of them from Baltimore.
Yeah, they basically took the Baltimore back, and we know. And the thing is, Harbaugh, we know historically, is the guy who always loves to run the ball, which is strange because he's got one of the most pass happy teams that he's coaching now. So hard to, especially Herbert being banged up, hard to play him right off the bat. But I'll tell you what, I'm always going to be interested in a low-owned Devontae Adams, who's also banged up, and we'll see if he even plays. But the guy I want to talk about really quickly, and it may not be this week, I think Joshua Palmer is going to have an absolutely monstrous season. He's 5,200. He's going to be this is a perfect time to test it out. Okay, 5,200. He's a guy who could easily be 7K in a couple weeks. And why doesn't you lose Mike Williams, you lose Keenan Allen? This is your guy. Okay, it's the closest thing you have to a guy. So if it's not him, it's probably Quentin Johnston. But I feel much better about Palmer. And I think Palmer is going to be a very high-end receiver this season. So I am going, at least fantasy-wise, I'm going to be way up on Josh Palmer. I'm going to play him every week. I'm not going to not locking him in or anything. I just think that this is a play that I really was excited about when I saw what the ownership projection was, because I could see him turning into a combination of those guys where he's getting the possession receptions and the bombs. And I still believe in obviously, as long as Justin Herbert is playing. So I'm very high on that part of this game. Maybe just again, it might end up being a skinny stack though, because I don't really want to go crazy here. It's not like there's a bunch of other great options, but maybe you do a stack with Herbert and Palmer, and if you want to get frisky, maybe you either throw in Chark or Quentin Johnston. But I like the idea of just those two, and I like Devontae Adams as a run back, assuming that he's available. So I may be a little bit more interested in this game than most people.
Denver, Seattle. Bo Nix, I guess, is a rookie. This is a tough spot. I mean, it's always tough to go into Seattle. And if it's first, he's starting, right? I mean, his first start going into Seattle, it's a tough spot. I'm probably going to stay off of that. And Seattle, the usual suspects, DJ Metcalf, Kenneth Walker, and then maybe this is another breakout. We could breakout year for the JSN. That's the best way I'm going to describe this. So yeah, I like the Seattle guys. What's his name? Geno Smith. Amazing his career. He's still around.
Right, what a trajectory.
with Metcalf and Walker. If Walker's healthy, I mean, he's great.
Yeah.
And I don't know what to do on the Denver side. Arvin Mims disappointed me so many times. Sutton, I guess, but again, I just think it's a tough spot to be in.
So I like some things in the afternoon because of what I was making earlier. Like I want just to point out that you could start off with a Denver-Seattle game stack that turns into the slightly the chalkier version of like the Washington Tampa Bay, which makes more sense. But I think it's worth like taking some shots here. I do have Metcalf as a priority play. I'm going to be playing him this year, and I love JSN. I think he's got tremendous upside this year too. I think Lockett's sort of starting to fade out a little bit. But Metcalf at 6,200 is like one of those guys who can outscore the top receivers. So if you're looking to save a little bit, I like Metcalf. And I'm not really like, it's not going to be heavily invested in the game. I think Javonte Williams fits into that same category as the Hubbards and all those guys. I think it's a little too early for me to play the Geno and Bo Nix stuff. But tell you what, if I'm struggling with some lineups or I missed out on a big player, I might switch over to this game because I'm going to have some interest in that Washington-Tampa Bay game and the Chargers and Raiders a little bit. So this would be a very unowned game that you could also throw into the mix. And it's not going to, I'll tell you what will be owned is probably that next game we're going to talk about here. I believe it's the next one. No, the one after that.
That was Cleveland?
No, that's not the one. I thought that's the one after that we're gonna talk about.
All right, so I'll start with Dallas Cleveland. This is an interesting matchup with respect to the fact that like CeeDee Lamb is like really good, but Cleveland's defense is really tough. So I don't know if I'm going to get so much over here. The team, the guy who's showing up is okay for me. I guess the Cleveland running back, I suppose, like Jerome Ford, but maybe with the field, maybe a little higher, 15 to 16% on him. But I'm not getting it too much over here. You getting a Lamb at 8,900 against Cleveland? I don't want to do that.
It's like statistically one of the worst possible matchups. It's only worth doing because you might never see CeeDee Lamb as low owned as he's going to be like ever again. And it just goes on that, hey, maybe they can change where they line him up. He doesn't need to go just against Joe Hayden all day. Like Cleveland's a great defense. There's nothing on paper that makes me want to play this game. There just is the logic of, okay, well, CeeDee Lamb, Jamar Chase, if I play those guys instead of Tyreek Hill and Justin Jefferson, I'm getting like 1/10 the ownership combined, So that's the only thing that's appealing to me, but nothing on paper that stands out as being especially good or not for me.
All right, so I don't know. You'll have to sell me on this last game because I'm not seeing too much of this. I'm getting 20% of Rashad White. And aside from that, I'm getting a whole lot of nothing from here. So tell me what you like in the Washington Tampa game.
I think Jaden Daniels is the best. Like I think he's pretty safely. Like if you're playing cash this week, I think he's your starting quarterback. It's either him or Richardson. He's going to have an absolutely monster year. There's pretty much no two ways about it. They're going to give him the keys from the beginning. They were one of the most pass. I mean, look, Sam Howell threw for 4,000 yards in this team, or whatever, 39-80 something last year. Okay, Jaden Daniels can move. I don't necessarily believe in the Tampa defense. I don't believe in the Washington defense. So I think both quarterbacks here, I'll throw Baker into the mix. I think Baker's completely reasonable here. And I don't think these teams can stop people. So I want every bit of it, I'm not going to be playing the running backs because I'm confused what they're going to do with Eckler and Robinson on the Washington side. But I do think the running back on the Rashad White, absolutely, I think you could argue for him being maybe the best cash game play. I really don't see how it could ever he's not going to get there sometimes because of randomness, but I just think it seems like a very safe, easy play. Terry McLaurin is going to have a big season. He's way too cheap at 5,600. He's another reason why guys like Josh Palmer will be completely unowned because they're in a similar price tier. Chris Godwin and Mike Evans are both terrific options on the other side. So I like every piece of this. This is the game I'll be heavily on in the afternoon. And then where I'm maybe struggling or where I may have missed something, that's when I probably will switch over. And we'll see what Sabersim gives me, where I'll switch over to some of the Vegas Chargers and maybe consider a little bit of the Denver, Seattle. But this is, I think and you're going to hear this from me every week. Washington is going to be my favorite team to both attack and to take players against. Put them in, nice Florida day. Actually, you know what? The weather actually doesn't look great. It's a little rainy. That's not my favorite thing in the world, but it's going to be super hot. I don't know. I actually don't think I care enough about the weather unless all of a sudden it gets like 50 knots of wind or something. But I'm very, very heavily interested in this game in every aspect of it, except for the Washington running backs. So go ahead.
No.
I can round out my stuff real quick if you want. I have the target games as Houston, Indy, Jacksonville, Miami, Washington, Tampa Bay. The pivots off of those games: Chargers, Vegas, Giants, Minnesota, Bears, Titans. My favorite quarterbacks are Richardson, Daniels, then Trevor Lawrence, Tua, and then Baker. And my favorite receivers, Tyreek. I want to get this spend up at least at receiver probably every week in most lineups. Tyreek, I like at the top as a logical one. I love the narrative I built for myself around Chase and CeeDee Lamb because both of them have this whole contract thing going on. I love the Josh Palmer on the cheap range. I love Terry McLaurin, but he's going to be popular. I love Pittman. He'll be popular as well. I love Metcalf at low ownership. Those are sort of my main receivers. And then running back, it's going to be interesting. I like what you said at the beginning. I do think it's going to be – I'm not going to have as many running backs in the flex and things like that as I have in years past. And there's more split back situations going on. So Hubbard, Robinson, Moss, Singletary, Rashad White. Looking at more cheap end running backs so I can spend up at receiver. That's sort of the way I'm approaching this first week anyway.
Okay.
Anything else you want to add? Look, we got a bunch of people in here. It's great for a Tuesday, and already people watching the early video. Sheets, anything else you want to add before we get out of here?
No, we're good.
All right. Good luck, everybody, and check out our packages. We've got the promo NFL 24 for 24% off the first month, and NFL yearly for 10% off the yearly package, which is a pretty unbelievable deal if you want to take a look at it. So. Anyway, we appreciate you all. Good luck this week, and